Welcome back to Art That Plays and Prays. This is Ginger. Today I'm going to compare three water-soluble products, Caran d'Ache Neocolor Pastels, Derwent Inktense Watercolor Pencils, and Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer, which are also watercolor pencils. I chose these three painting tools because all of them can be used as dry media, but their best results show up when activated with water. Now people ask me which is a better brand. If you're on a tight budget and can only invest in one set, I hope this video can help you with your purchasing decision. Caran d'Ache Neocolor are Swiss made. They work like watercolor pencils but come in crayon form, and they're organized in these nice sturdy tins that come in packs of 10s, 15, 30, 40 or 84 crayons. The full set has 126 colors. Derwent Inktense also is packaged in metal tins, and the shades are as intense as the brand claims, and you'll see later how bold and vivid the colors are. In this video, I'll also talk about Faber-Castell's Albrecht Dürer, named after a famous German Renaissance painter. Of course, that is because Faber-Castell is made in Germany and was founded in the 1760s. That's just a bit of history for you, and the reason I mention it is because it gives us a feel of how reliable the company is. They were able to withstand the test of time, and there's a sense of leadership and expertise in the industry when the brand is that old. And personally, their longevity makes me feel secure, like I can trust their products. Anyway, for comparison, I've prepared here a chart where we can make swatches of selected colors. I'm using heavy gauge watercolor paper here. Swiss made Neocolor is on the left column, German made Albrecht Dürer occupies the middle, and Derwent from England is on the right side. When I had this idea for a product preview, I didn't foresee that I'd get into trouble with the comparison. I didn't realize until much later that the color names would give me a headache. Like, look at the labels here. They're not the same. When I was growing up, when you open a box of crayons, orange was always orange. Today, manufacturers have gone ballistic with creative names. They call it like mango or cadmium orange, or in the case of Derwent here, sienna gold. It just really blew me away. So for the purpose of this video, what I did was to pick the pencils and pastels that are closest to each other in terms of hue, and regardless of what name they have. For instance, I'm comparing here Neocolor's Flame Red with Faber-Castell's Dark Cadmium Orange and Derwent's Tangerine. I'm not after the names anymore because the labels are just all over the place. We'll go with the saturation and see which brand gives us better results. So if you try this process at home, you just might be able to pick other combinations of colors that are better suited to each other for the sake of comparison. But since I don't own the largest tin sets of these three brands, I had to make do with what I have. Hopefully you'll see from the comparison that the colors I chose are almost the same across these three manufacturers. So check these out, the ones I've colored so far. As you may have noticed, I make sure that before I apply the wet brush to engage the pigments, I clean the brush. Yeah, it has to be done. I have to make sure that I'm not transferring pigments from one brand to the other, because that will distort our comparison. And while you're watching me go from color to color, let me say a few more things about these three watercolor media. With Caran d'Ache Neocolor, blending is quite easy. You can layer colors, add water, and then watch how the gradients look seamless. And you can apply dry Neocolors on dry paper, wet Neocolors on dry paper, or dry Neocolors on wet paper. In other words, it doesn't matter how you apply it, wet on wet, dry on dry, or a combination of both. It's that versatile. You can experiment with it and you won't be disappointed with the results. Also, Neocolor feels buttery when you lay it down, and because it's creamy, it's smooth to apply. But one downside for me is that it breaks very fast. Like, see what just happened to my flame red, right? I didn't even exert too much pressure on the crayon and it just snapped. Also, the tips of these crayons are not pointy sharp. That makes it difficult for me to work with the fine details. If I'm going to color directly with a crayon, it's kind of hard. You can be precise with these pastels if you need to go over tiny corners or create thin lines. You can't sharpen with these to a point, just like what you do with wooden pencil crayons. But you can easily work around this problem by using a brush. You can use a wet brush, dab it on the crayon, just like what we do with watercolor cakes. The dry watercolor, then apply that brush on your painting. Now going to Derwent Inktense, I love the bold and daring colors Derwent creates. Like if you look at my third column here on the right, like they're kind of really vivid, like very bold. However, if you look closely, the watercolor pencils leave streaks. For some of my comparisons here, look carefully. The original pencil marks are still visible, even as I dissolve them in water. Did you notice how I had to run the water brush longer on top of the Derwent just to scrape off and dissolve those streaks? Now, if this happens to you, you may have to go easy on the pencil scratching. When you apply the pencil lines too heavily on the paper, sometimes it's difficult to dilute the colors with water. So my tip is be gentle with the pencil rubbing so you don't leave deep dents on the paper. Now according to Derwent, the pigments stay permanent when dry, so you can add layers afterwards without fear of smudging the underpainting, so you don't have to worry about unwanted colors bleeding unintentionally. However, different illustrators and designers have had different experiences with regards to the ink's permanence. Some artists complain that even after their work dried hours later, the paint is still reactivated when moistened again. Now, some were surprised and were disappointed by this. In my own experience, I noticed the same thing when I was doing my Bible journaling. I layered fresh Derwent Inktense colors on top of a supposedly dried up wash of Derwent Inktense, but both layers reconstituted and blended together as if they were fresh colors being mixed. And I can understand now how some people will be annoyed by that unexpected behavior, because of course the manufacturer said that the inks are supposed to be permanent, right? But in my case, knowing that stuff like that can happen, I just adjusted my coloring techniques to prevent mud on my painting. So at a certain point, I also decided to just spray my art with a workable fixative before painting again. Now look at the results we have here so far. The colors are actually very vibrant across all three brands. Although Derwent's saturation stands out, Neocolor and Albrecht Dürer are not so far behind in brightness. To be honest, they're almost the same, so if you're going to invest and choose a product, the crucial determinant would most probably be the price point. Which one can you afford, right? So the truth is, these are not cheap sets because we do pay for quality, but based on my experience, they last a long time. If you're to ask me to pick my favorite, I'll go with Caran d'Ache. I find the Neocolor easier to manipulate than the Derwent, mostly because their color saturation and blending behavior on paper are very predictable. There are no unwanted surprises except for the crayon suddenly snapping on you while you're working, like what you saw happen a while ago. But you can easily prevent breakage by going easy on the coloring, so just be less vigorous, and you don't really need to hold the crayons too tightly. With Derwent, the color indicator on the pencil barrel is not a true representation of the ink pigments, so it's imperative that you make a color chart to aid you in your work. But with Neocolor, this is not the problem. What you see on the crayon is exactly what you'll get when you paint with it. There's no confusion even if you don't create your color swatches. I also like Faber-Castell because they're easy to manipulate, and the saturation level is almost at par with its rivals. With Albrecht Dürer, I don't see any residue on line marks after water dilution. At least there's none on this experiment we are doing here, but I did experience the streaking in another project. It happened when I applied the dry pencils on wet paper. The results were a bit ugly, but I tried to color now dry on dry and then activate with water afterwards. So there you have it, friends. I've shared with you the positives and negatives of each product in this review. I shared with you which one is my personal favorite and why. So I leave this comparative chart with you so you can judge for yourselves which ones match your taste and your purposes. Let me just say as a last note that these three brands here are by far the best ones out there in the market. Caran d'Ache, Faber-Castell, and Derwent. There are many other no-name brands out there. Water-soluble pencils out there are, but quality-wise, these three are the cream of the crop. Thanks for watching this product review by Art That Plays and Prays. Ginger is your host, saying God bless you. See you again next time.